Okay guys, today in Photopea we are going to learn about three of what are called the touch-up tools. So the touch-up tools are basically up in this area here. And the first one we're going to deal with is the spot healing brush tool. Now to do this you're going to have to download 4 files. I know there are 3 tools we're going to learn today, but you're going to use 4 files to complete these tasks. In the end you should submit 3 files, and I'll show you that one at a time as I go. The first file we're going to deal with is called Photopea Spot Healing. And if you'll notice in the layers I have a directions over the top. You can hide that directions and just follow the simple directions. Now this tool works very simply. I'm going to zoom in, and our goal here, our problem is how do we remove the blemishes on this surprised girl's face. So what we're going to do is this is very simple, get the spot healing brush tool. This is a magic tool. I'm going to increase the size a little bit. I'm going to make sure the hardness is 0, which means I now have a soft brush. And one at a time, I'm going to paint over each of the blemishes. So I'm going to left mouse click, hold, and paint a little bit, and let go. And that didn't work at all. Let's try again. There we go. You got to try to make sure that goes away. So what it's doing is it's trying to find comparable pixels and basically substitute them in there for what it detects to be that blemish. So if we do that, it's a pretty good job. I might make this brush a little smaller and do this one again. I think there's a little bit left over. But this tool can be used very quickly to enhance photographs. It can enhance older photographs that have dust and scratches and stuff on them, but this is one use when we're dealing with facial blemishes and so on. Okay, now at this point you can keep the directions out, you can delete them. Now we can save this out. I want this as a JPEG, so File, Export as JPEG, and then always high quality, 100%. Save. And then we should be able to save this with the proper naming convention. Some of you guys are now losing points for your naming convention. All right, so I'm going to go over it again. PER underscore your period. My period is the magical, mystical period 8. Last name, your last name, not mine. J, your first initial, not mine. And this one we'll call it spot healing. And save that out and submit that. Okay, the next tool we're going to deal with, we have to go to another file, and this tool is called the patch tool. And again, I have directions underneath this layer here, and it says use the patch tool with the source select or setting selected. See the sub menu. Remember, this is the sub menu up here to get rid of the moon. Control Z to undo that. Okay, because I just want to show you what that does. Then you can Control Z to undo that, and then you're going to use the same tool. Change the source to target and create 5 new moons. Okay, so our patch tool is located underneath our spot healing brush tool. And if I left click and hold, I get the option of selecting all these. I'm going to choose patch tool. Now the patch tool works like a lasso tool initially. So I'm going to make this big selection around the moon. And again, our problem is we want to get rid of it. I want to make sure initially I have source selected, which should be the default. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to click inside and I'm going to drag it up to another space. And Photopea, I'm going to deselect, does a pretty good job of blending in with pixels already on the image over the top of something you want to get rid of. Yeah, you can see a little bit of a mess right there. But if you really want to get good at this, you can use the same tool and start removing some of those little edges that look a little funky. But again, I said undo that. So Control Z, I did it twice to get back to here. And now I'm going to set this to target, which means now we're basically duplicating what we have selected, and then Photopea will blend it with the background, again, trying to use like pixels. Again, there's a little artifacts down here that aren't perfect. I think Photoshop does a little better job processing these. Move one over here, select this guy again, move it over here. And the directions say create 5 new moons. What happens if we go over the top of trees just to see what happens? Well, that's not very good. Now is it probably something we shouldn't do. And I'm going to go way over here into the dark. But see, it tried to blend it in. It just has a hard time when you have hard edges like that. So Control D to deselect. Again, get rid of your directions. Throw them in the trash. File, Export as. JPEG, 100% again, save. And I'm going to use this that's already in here to start. This is not spot healing, so all I have to do now is change that last part. This we'll just call it patch. Save. And then the last tool is a little more challenging. All right, so we have two files I've given you. Clone stamp A actually has the directions on it, but it really doesn't tell you how to use it. It just tells you sort of what to do. Okay, so what you want to do is we're going to clone stamp this ice cream onto clone stamp B onto this cone. To do that, once again, we're going to get the clone stamp tool, which is right here. I'm going to use a decent brush, a soft brush. I got a size of 150. And what you do is you find where you want to start cloning from. And in this case, I look at this and I go, well, I want to get pretty accurate with it connecting with the cone part of this. So I'm going to select right where the cone would meet the ice cream. All right. And what I mean by select is to get a sample, you have to hold down Alt. If I hold down Alt, I get these crosshairs. I'm just going to click right on that edge, left click once, boom, and it's sampled. Now watch when I move my brush. You'll see a preview of what's going to start painting. So now we just go over to Clone Stamp B, and with that little preview, we try to match it up the best we can. Doesn't have to be perfect, with a portion of the cone. Now I'm going to left click hold, and I'm just going to paint. Be careful not to go too low, because we're going to clean that up in a minute. So we're going to paint, try to bring all the ice cream in, and it's cloning from the other image into this image, and that looks pretty good there. So the next thing we're going to want to, oh, I messed up. Control Z, I'm going to undo that. That was so easy, we'll do it again. I'm going to do a new layer. I always like to clone stamp in new layers because it always gives us options in the end. So I'm going to do this again, close enough. Remember again not to go too low. We're going to mask out that white part on the bottom here in a minute using masks that you guys have already learned a little bit about. And again, that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to zoom in, and in that layer I'm going to create a new mask just by clicking on this icon here. And to paint in that mask we need black, which will hide the pixels. In this case I'm going to use a hardness of 90 because we sort of want a hard edge on the edge of our brush. The size is 15, that's pretty good. And I'm going to actually zoom in once, maybe twice more, so that we can be very accurate when we're painting. So now I'm not in my pixel layer, I'm in my mask layer, and I'm just going to start painting, and you'll see that those white pixels start to go away. And I'm actually going to go into the ice cream a little bit, and I'm not being perfect. I'm being pretty careful though. It doesn't look as good when we're zoomed in as it does when we'll zoom out in a second. So now now that I have that, I can increase the size of my brush by clicking closed brackets, and I can very quickly fill in the rest of that mask. Space bar to get the hand tool, move down, go down a little further than you might think. Double click the zoom tool to get to 100%. And now we have ice cream. There's a little gap there, which is interesting. So I'm just going to bump the layers down. Nobody will ever know. That's a little cheat. So what I did there was I had my move tool. I was on my ice cream layer, and I just used the arrows on my keyboard. So I'll go up with my arrows, and this will bump anything in your layer by 1 pixel at a time. So I bumped it down so that little white gap can't be seen, and it overlaps just right, and that's it. So now once again, merge down or flatten. Either one does the same thing in this case. Merge down will merge a layer down one layer. So I merge down and they both go together. File, export as, JPEG, again 100% quality, save, and we already have that there. So once again, all I have to do is change the name of the project to Clone Stamp, save, and I'm done. And those are the 3 files I'm going to go submit. So if you have a little extra time today and you finish all 3 of those, I know I went through it pretty quickly. Don't be afraid to get the clone stamp tool and just play. You know, sample around different places, and you can move things around, You can sample over the top and move out. You know, it's a pretty cool tool. And the fact that you can go in between multiple images, and I can clone stamp like her eye onto the ice cream cone, and it blends in pretty good automatically. Pretty cool tool. Get to know the clone stamp tool and these other couple of tools.